Welcome, everybody, to the Superhumanistic podcast, where we talk about all things health, wellness, and longevity. Thank you for joining us today. We are your hosts. I'm David.
I'm Jessica.
Make sure that you hit that follow button on this podcast so you never miss another episode. We put out one episode a week on Saturdays. Make sure that you share this podcast with someone that you love, that you want them to go on and live a longer, healthier, happier life as well. And don't forget to leave us a rating and review if you ever found value in these podcasts. That helps others find this podcast so that you can help them on their health and wellness journey. Last week, we talked about sleep, which we've talked about quite a bit in our podcast. We stress how important getting a good night's sleep is. This one's geared towards some new data related to that tipping point of when you actually fall asleep and how all that works. So if you want to learn more about that, go back and listen to last week's episode. This week, we are going to be talking about that time when optimized high performers kind of hit a wall. This happens during a day or a week when your biometric rings are green, your meal prep is ready, but your brain is just saying no.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely know this wall very well myself. I've experienced it a little bit this morning. Sometimes for some people it's a whole day of having a wall in front of them, and for me it was the morning time today. So we're stripping away the hustle culture layer and looking at what to do when that motivation piece of our health and wellness goals are completely vanishing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the paradox, right? We know that the science shows that maintaining those VO2 max levels that we've been talking about in our recent podcasts, a very popular term apparently as of recent, and muscle protein synthesis is the literal key to a longer life. But sometimes the biological drive to sit on the couch and eat processed snacks is a little bit stronger than that drive to go and work out.
Exactly, and the first thing that we have to realize is that motivation is a finite resource, right? It's a chemical state and not that personality trait. It's like when it dips, it's our body's way of signaling one of three things. Either we're experiencing burnout, we have some boredom, or there's a lack of clarity.
All right, so we're going to jump into some strategies here. The first strategy is called that minimum viable effort strategy. I love this concept when I'm unmotivated, which happens every once in a while. I stop trying to be that superhumanistic person that we talk about on the podcast all the time. And really, I settle for just being a consistent human being. And I know some other people's podcasts that we listen to out there, like Rob Dial, for example, always talks about how consistent wins every single time. He'll take consistency over the smartest person, over the most talented person. When it comes to being successful in anything in life, it's all about that consistency. So if my goal was to do a 60-minute Zone 2 run, and I can't really fathom it today, I tell myself I'll do a 10-minute mobility workout.
Yeah, I think that's that shift and that motivation piece too, is like reframing it to be something else in our brain. So then it's not like, oh, I'm going to go do this run. No, I'm doing this for another reason. So we're like shifting that thought in our brains. It's the identity over intensity rule. So by doing the 10 minutes, you're still the type of person who works out. You're keeping that neural pathway for that habit alive without that massive cortisol spike of forcing a grueling session that will feel depleted afterwards.
Yeah, that's why it's super important to really evaluate the why. The why is super important for anything in life, whether it's work or health and wellness strategies. So we also need to talk about that longevity fatigue that people can sometimes get caught up in. When you're trying to live to 100 years old or even beyond that, we forget to really enjoy the moment and where you're at right now, whether you're 35 or 50 years of age. So if your wellness goals feel like a prison, your biological systems are going to rebel at some point.
Right. If you're miserable, your stress hormones like cortisol are going to constantly be elevated, which actually works against that longevity goal. So if you're unmotivated, ask yourself this: am I doing this because I want to feel vibrant, or am I doing this out of a fear of aging? Fear is a terrible long-term fuel. So the next thing we're going to get into is looking at the environment that we are in or going to be in with working out. So it's called the environment audit.
All right, let's get tactical with this one. Jessica, what's your favorite go-to move when you feel that slump coming on?
Well, again, I look at my environment. Usually unmotivated self, me, has made it too hard to succeed. So I'm setting a goal that's just too big for me, or I am looking at something that's just too much at that moment. So I'll reset by simplifying. So I stop tracking every single macro for a few days and focus on crowding out and just making sure that I get my fiber and protein in first. So looking at your goal and making it simpler is a way to get remotivated.
And that's huge. Simplify to amplify. If the stack of supplements, the cold plunges, and the red light therapy feel like too much, drop the extras. Go back to the big three: sleep, movement, and whole foods.
And another thing that we've talked about a lot on our podcast is that community and social contagion. So don't do this alone. We are naturally social animals. If you're unmotivated, it might be because you're in this vacuum. So call a friend, call a family member, maybe join a class. That's what helped me this morning, is to know that there are other people at this class, other people that I can not necessarily compare myself to, but know that also are struggling, maybe as we go to the gym. So having a class gets me out of like my own funk. Also, you can go out into a park where there's other people that are active, and just naturally seeing those other people being active gets you active.
All right, yeah, I mean, humans are mimics. If you surround yourself with other people who value certain things such as health, wellness, vitality, and longevity, your motivation often takes care of itself.
Right, so if you're listening to this and you're feeling like you're stuck, give yourself permission to lower the bar, but don't walk away from the track.
Yeah, remember that longevity isn't a sprint. It's the longest marathon you'll ever run. Take the rest of the day if you need it, but keep your eyes on the horizon.
Thanks for tuning in to Superhumanistic. We'll see you next time. Bye.